So, about as equally as famous, though I don't think this is at Giant's Causeway. So, what is your Big 10, buddy?
My big number 10, it was kind of my last minute substitution for that U2 one that I took out since I knew you were going to do an Anton Corbijn photo. And this is the 1991 Susie and the Banshees album, Superstition, which is nobody's favorite, I don't think, Susie and the Banshees album. And in fact, I think that the people who are hardcore Susie and the Banshees fan probably hate this album. And this is, I would tend to agree. I think it's got some decent stuff, but it's definitely mellowing into pop. But I think she looks gorgeous there. I mean, I'd love, and just the style of it, what using, I'm assuming, is a tilt shift. So that it goes out of focus. Here, I'm sorry, I'm doing the non-mirrored. I can't see what I'm doing. You know, as it falls into out of focus, even just by the bottom. So I think it's a beautiful picture of Susie without all the, you know, I mean, she's got heavy makeup, but not the super thick eyeliner and stuff. And it's moving away from a goth thing. I do like some of the songs, but I don't think it's their best album. But I think it's a really lovely album cover.
Is that the one with Dear Prudence on it?
Nope, that was earlier. This one, the only song that really got known, I think, was "Kiss Them for Me." I May Be Delayed. Do you remember that one? Which saw it had a little chart success, but yeah, they only really had one album after this, and I think maybe just the album prior to this, which I think is my favorite and is already into that sort of mellower, non-goth transition, is Peep Show, which is the one I really like. It has Peekaboo on it, and I think that was the song that I really. It wasn't the song because you know that I know Cities in the Dust from prior to that, but from watching 120 Minutes and stuff, I think that was right around the era. And Peekaboo really I liked as a song, and I really like Peep Show as an album. And I have some of her older albums, Hyena and one other that I'm not thinking of right now.
Well, they definitely moved from, a post-punk, then to kind of like to goth, and then, like you said, more pop-orientated. The interesting thing is, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Was it Bernie Grumman? That the Sex Pistols are famous for, tell him to fuck off, you dirty bugger. He's interviewing the Sex Pistols, and it's the interview that really made him infamous. Because they swore on live TV. And actually, Susie Sue is in the background. She is there present in the studio for that particular interview. And so it's fun. He went from kind of being on that Sex Pistols entourage and moving on to her own thing, where it was definitely, I think she had some Joy Division and Bauhaus influences in her music, or unless it went the other way, I don't know. But I always kind of grouped like Joy Division, early Susie and the Banshees, and that other group that I mentioned that I can't remember right now. Kind of being Bauhaus, all kind of being in that early goth look. I mean, and the Cure too, actually. You know, before they even became more poppy. You know, when they were much more intense. You know, the Cure, even though they still had some heavy thematic elements in their songs, the Cure definitely moved on at a certain point to more catchy driven tunes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think a lot of them mellowed out. I think it's that kind of over the top persona, you know, I mean, with the super heavy goth makeup and stuff. I mean, it has a use by date on it to a degree, you know. I mean, you would feel, and you see pictures, she looks tough as hell even now, you know, does Susie Sue. It's still very stylish. But I think, you know, if you were 50 years old and still had to do heavy makeup, you'd feel kind of silly about yourself. And so it doesn't surprise me that kind of those really heavy goth acts that had a real look about them. I mean, I know Robert Smith's hair is still a mess. But
I have a theory about that. That they did all of that shit with their hair and all that, so that if they became famous, you would recognize them on stage, you would recognize them on their album covers. But if you take that hair and just let it go down and it's not all teased and that those guys could walk out in public and nobody would have a fucking clue who they were.
Possibly, yeah. You know, it's as good a theory as any. But yeah, I could see that, because it would be, I don't know, I guess part of the punk aesthetic was to take it out on the streets with you, you know, to be wearing be like, you know, Vivian in the Young Ones. And goth was maybe not that confrontational, you know. I mean, it was just dark, but it definitely had a look to it that I think that is maybe something, yeah, that you could take off and put on, you know, as the situation demanded. But I can say I don't know squat about Susie or Robert Smith, for that matter. Personally, it's always been very much image driven and persona driven, and I love it when she caterwauls. You know, I love that dense, kind of heavy, maybe not the super earliest sound where it was really noisy. It was maybe a little more punk, but when they got into that kind of dark goth headspace, I do. And you know, the Banshees, that was an appropriately named backup band for a while, but by the time you get to Superstition, it's pretty, you know. I think that Kiss 'Em For Me is a dance floor banger, you know. I think it's a great song. Whether or not it's a great Susie and the Banshees song, I guess depends on how invested you were in the Susie persona. But if you could take it just as a track, then I think it's good stuff. I played the album for the first time in a long time the other day, and Fear the Unknown. It's got some good stuff on it, but it's very mellow, you know, just kind of tinged with darkness, as opposed to big doomy. You know, she's definitely singing more than she is screaming.
Right. No, I never really thought of her screaming in any of her songs. But it did have almost, in some spots, a different vibe, almost like a spoken word vibe, as opposed to screaming. I'm thinking of maybe some of their earlier stuff. I could be wrong. I'm not as familiar. I remember they had hits that we would watch on Top of the Pops. So probably the first song I remember from them would be Happy House.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably got the wrong title for that. Um, but one of the things that I always did respect about her is that, um, in the punk world, one of the big tropes that they wanted to go against were the Beatles. They didn't like hippie culture in general. They didn't like the flares. They didn't like, all that kind of stuff. And she was kind of the first person that I can think of that did a Beatles song kind of as like a fuck you to the punk and goth world.
Yeah, it's kind of being
for that way. But I remember when I was hanging out with punkers, the Beatles were considered an abomination, and I still see that today especially if I watch certain YouTube streams. There are people that just hate the Beatles, but then you'll see that they like to listen to Susie and the Banshees, New Order, a lot of punk and post-punk stuff. And I think a lot of that music was driven to, break away that the English sound is the Beatles,
Mm-hmm.
and that British blues sound, from Deep Purple and bands like that, where they wanted to break away from that as well, which worked out well because I think during the 80s, England was putting out easily the best bands around at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Had to go to low power mode. We must be an ready.
Yeah.
Might be a 3-parter.
Yeah. And I want to say the last thing on this, it says that the photography was done by Donna Francesca, and I literally can't find squat about Donna Francesca other than the fact that it also seems to be the name of an Italian restaurant. So everything that I came up with was about the restaurant and not the person. So somebody who I couldn't find any deep history in photography, whether it's there or not. Google was not helping me out. So that's all I had to add on that.
Yeah. Well, for me, all my last ones, even though I did mostly male ones, I did add, female photographers. So my number 10 is Rush Signals. Again, I think another iconic album cover. I know a lot of people were turned off by this album because it did become much more synthesizer orientated. Though in later albums, the guitar work definitely kind of seems to fade into the background. Guitar, Alex Lifeson's guitar is still very prevalent in this album. The photographer for this shot is Deborah Samuel, who did a lot of the covers for Rush. I think she did anything that was a picture, she had done the photography for it.
Like going back to hemispheres and stuff?
What's that?
Is it like going back to hemispheres and stuff?
I think going back to hemispheres, I know she did moving pictures, and she did the photography for Exit Stage Left. So definitely this era she was doing, but I'm pretty sure even after this, she was still doing covers for them. As far as photography wise, what is great about this cover is Rush, as most Canadians tend to be, are very proud of their Canadian origins.
Mm-hmm.
And this particular fire hydrant here has this little symbol on it, which should be more easy to see in the. Yeah, but I'll just show it up close real quick. And man, I'm catching both lights. I just can't get a foot. You can see there's a little like a TW on there. That is from the Toronto Department of Public Works. So they do like to slip in little Canadian references into different things. I mean, I remember even when Rush was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, Neil Peart gets up there and he's like, you know, in the pantheon of stars of, you know, rock bands in the sky, there's one little star up there in the shape of a maple leaf that, you know, that shows us, you know. The artwork design for this, though, was done by Hugh Syme. Hugh Syme, I believe, did all the Rush covers, except for maybe the first one, but I'm not positive. He also did covers for a band called Rabbit, Platinum Blonde, White Snake, and later on Dream Theater, which is I don't know them very well. I've been hearing a lot about them. I need to find out a little bit about them. And to go back actually to Deborah Samuels, she did covers for Red Rider in the 70s, I think that is, Glass Tiger, and Frozen Ghost, which kind of spanned over a few decades. And I believe those are all Canadian bands. So they worked heavily, you know, Rush worked heavily with Canadian artists and photographers for their album covers, which is, you know, that, hey, I'm cool with that. You know, you're proud of where you came from. And actually, Hugh Symes has been a member of Rush here and there, doing additional keyboards, and doing backup vocals for some Rush songs, but I don't know what those particular Rush songs are. But yeah, so actually, yeah, Hugh Symes has worked with them since 1975, so that's probably maybe around the Caress of Steel era, or I know he worked with them on 2112, but beyond that, you know, in the earlier days, I don't know which one. Because like Caress of Steel to me has a much more different aesthetic to it than many of their other albums. And these guys were known for having a great sense of humor. You know, they have some dark subject matter that they cover in their songs. But I've seen interviews with them, and they all are remarkably funny in their, you know, their view of life.
Yeah. Well, I remember Geddy Lee saying they take off to the Great White North for Bob and Doug.
Yeah. I need to get that album again. Not the Strange Brew one, but the one I think is just Bob and Doug McKenzie is what it was called. Great White North, maybe, but because I know the song.
No, that sounds right.
On there. It just has a picture of them in front of that map, like holding a beer with their toques on. Of course, Rick Moranis went on to be a much more better known actor than the I don't know which one was Bob and which one was Doug right now.
Yeah, Dave Thomas was Bob, I think, and yeah, but it's almost it's like Bill and Ted. It's almost beside the point who is who. There's so.
But yeah, so those are basically my albums there.
Okay, well that's cool. So I remember. I'm sorry, we're talking over each other and I'm cutting you out. What were you gonna say?
Definitely, I think we're hitting the hour mark on this one.
So I just had a couple of things then that I wanted to add. First of all, that this is the album, of course, that you had reprinted in a huge silk screen hanging in your bedroom.
Yeah.
And it has the feel of a Hypnosis cover, even though it's just a photograph of it, you know, but it's kind of the cheeky story being told there, you know, of the signals the dog obviously smelling where other dogs have peed, you know, so it's got a kind of a little bit transgressive in a striking photo that requires a little bit of interpretation. I do think that is a really good album cover, and maybe less so because I don't know the music so much, but as an illustration of the title Signals, I think that's a brilliant album cover, and I like the design overall of that very much. But yeah, I remember it being around, but I don't remember. I probably couldn't hum you a single thing after Moving Pictures, and not a whole lot of stuff before that.
Subdivisions is I've always liked. Actually, the whole album. I like every song on here. Probably the weakest would be Losing It. I get a lot of people don't particularly care for that song. I don't mind it so much. I still like it, but if you had to pick a weaker track, that would be it. You know, it's kind of a Rush's version of a ballad. So.
But yeah, you're probably right about the time. I just had those couple things that I wanted to say. Do you have anything else you want to wrap up with?
No, just thanks a lot for, doing another one of these with me. And, it might be a week or so before I get it up.
Yeah.
The video. But, no, dude, I had fun with this, man. I want to definitely do some other album cover tropes, You mentioned one that we'll probably do down the line that was a great idea that I don't know if I want to mention yet, even though nobody watches my channel. Somebody could see it and go, bam, hey, there's an idea. I'm going to do it, first. Not that we own this format or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Not even close. It would actually be cool if somebody did another video where, what's my favorite photographed album covers and learn about photographers. Because like I said at the beginning of all of this, that the point of some of our conversations or these videos are going into when we have our conversations. Sometimes I will write stuff down that you mention and talk about, and then I'll go online and I'll just go into a rabbit hole on a particular band or something, And so, again, we're not experts, we're not historians, we're not musicians, but it is fun to learn about these records and CDs and tapes that in these cases we grew up on, and learning the stories behind those album covers and so forth.
Yeah, you've knocked out there. There we go. I didn't catch any of that. What'd you say?
I said we're down to 10% on my phone.
Oh.
So that's why it was,
okay, yeah. And Steph just came back from the store, so I need to help unload the car. So.
All right. Goodbye, VC. Bye, Bryce.
All right.
Great phone call, and we got to think of one more idea here to so we could circulate these ideas so that they sometimes have a common thread, but are different enough to where, we're not just, what would our prime album be for this or that, you know what I'm saying? But we've talked about that. And so, yeah. And if you're in the VC and you actually made it this far, congratulations.
Yeah. And maybe comment with your favorite, photographed album cover.
Yeah, let's get some comments going, man. That's the one thing is, I I don't get a lot of comments. I try to comment back to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know.
So we're encouraging it. It's the call to action.
Leave a comment behind.
There you go.
And do that and leave a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe. Actually, don't subscribe because then that kind of, I think, ruins up my algorithms.
Yeah. There you go.
All right.
If you're going to watch the videos, subscribe. If you're not going to watch the videos, don't subscribe.
All
All right.
right.
Cool.
Catch you later.